You
This
are
is,
live.
Okay, go ahead, Melissa.
Hi there. This is group one. My name is Melissa.
I'm Angela.
I'm Angelica.
And I'm Cameo.
And
Hi, guys.
we're going to discuss chapter one. I'm going to summarize what it was about. So it talked about diffusion, which is the process by which an innovation is communicated through certain channels over time among the members of a social system. And diffusion is concerned with the spread of messages that are perceived as new ideas. In order to process these new ideas, it goes through a communication process in which people can create and share information with one another in order to reach a mutual understanding.
Hey, Melissa, this is Angela. I just wanted to say that with diffusion, it was pretty interesting that they can be both planned and spontaneous spread of new ideas. They included both. Yeah.
Exactly. But whether they're planned or not, there is a lot of degree of uncertainty and perceived risk that's involved with the diffusion process. So in order to reduce the degree of uncertainty, individuals can obtain information which can affect that uncertainty in a situation where a choice exists among a set of alternatives. This chapter also discussed four main elements in the diffusion of new ideas, which is innovation, the communication channels, time, and the social system. Does anyone have any thoughts on this chapter?
Yeah, so this is Angelica, by the way. So the social system I thought was pretty important because it seems to have a huge impact on the process of diffusion. So it talks about in the chapter that the change agents and opinion leadership members have a strong influence on whether it will be successful or not. So to recruit really strong change agents is really important when you're trying to incorporate change in any facility.
Yeah, that's a great point.
This is Cameo. I thought that was pretty interesting, was talking about diffusion being a particular type of communication, especially when a new idea is at hand, and that'll play a part later in another chapter that we go over.
Exactly.
Great.
Okay.
So that's good with chapter one, I think.
Yes, we're good.
Yeah. Okay. So the next chapter, chapter two, we covered a little portion about it. Essentially, it was about how the diffusion traditional model has made an impact on public health and medical sociology. In the chapter, it gives several examples about how new drugs were adopted by healthcare professionals, as well as family planning methods and the prevention of HIV and AIDS that were adopted by patients or members of the society. So this model, the diffusion model, has also contributed to overall public health improvement due to the diffusion of smoking cessation programs and mammography campaigns. Rogers talks about one study in particular, which is one of the most important studies as far as diffusion. And this is where the doctors adopted the use of tetracycline antibiotics, and they were able to diffuse this topic by basically word of mouth through interpersonal networks by doctors. So again, it ties into the first chapter where they highlighted social networks and the recruitment of opinion leaders and to help establish diffusion. And he highlights this, basically, the diffusion as a social process. So that's what I got from that chapter.
There's a lot of...
This is Angela. Oh, go ahead, Melissa.
Sorry. So yeah, I did read that whenever you're around a social network of people, it's kind of like you either can lead by example, whether it's good or bad. So if you see people not smoking that used to smoke and you're involved with that circle of friends, then more likely you can follow that same, practice of habit by smoking cessation.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was interesting how much it does play a big process in the diffusion process.
Right.
Yeah.
Have anything?
Yeah.
Also, it states that it's, you know, very much needed that some groundwork was laid out, but that there's much more room for future research and a lot more digging to do and some different objectives in the direction that theory suggests.
Yeah, and it also when they actually follow a paradigm in a certain research field, it allows them to, like Angela said, dig deeper and have a more coherent research field.
Great point, Cameo.
Thanks.
Good. And then our final chapter
is chapter 11. This is Cameo. Chapter 11 was looking at the meaning of consequences that are associated with innovations, like why the consequences are not readily studied by the diffusion researchers, and also the different types of consequences. So what are consequences? They are changes that take place either due to an acceptance or a rejection of an innovation. They're not readily studied because of three main reasons. Either the change agencies have readily emphasized adoption, thinking that just because their innovation was adopted, it's positive, which that's not a valid perception. It's also too common to use the survey method, which is not an appropriate method for investigating consequences. Diffusion researchers have relied heavily on surveying for their method of collecting data, but collecting data on consequences is much better measured over a period of time or doing an in-depth case study. And it's often hard to measure because they're not aware of the full potential of the consequences, you know, for a long period of time.
Yeah.
There's three types of consequences: either desirable versus undesirable, direct versus indirect, anticipated versus unanticipated. And usually three types go together, and that's undesirable, indirect, and unanticipated, or desirable, direct, and anticipated go together.
Yeah, good point. I also thought it was interesting too, that if a social structure in a system is already unequal, that further it will lead to greater inequality and socioeconomic gaps with innovation consequences, which I thought was interesting. It makes something worse that's already bad, essentially.
Right.
So I wonder why the survey is not a good method to use when you're trying to look at the consequences. Is it just because it's at that moment in time, so it's hard to tell, or I don't remember if I read any of that in the chapter or not.
Because a survey is usually done like right then and there, and if you survey somebody long distance in the future when they've actually had time to observe what the consequences are, then
I guess observe what the consequences. Right. So I guess they can observe what they are and then figure out how they can overcome the consequence or the issue, change it. So down the road they can go back and I guess have a better outcome or outlook on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think our final question that we came up with is, if communication is a two-way process of convergence, what steps should or could one take if one of the communicators is of authoritarian style in nature and dominates the conversation or the group direction? What steps can be taken to help ease some of the disconnect? That is our question. For others, is to think about what steps can be taken to kind of mediate if someone is more overpowering in the communication. So that's all I think we have for now.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
And that
Thank you.
concludes our
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed our presentation or live, semi-live TV.